I'm just trying to
my friend Cara.
Cara.
And just note that we are so fortunate that Cara's here because she has copies of her most recent book available for sale, and maybe at some point say a little more about her next book. Excellent.
All right.
Friends.
Thank you. Okay, we have, I've been told by Eric a couple of times that we are tight on time. So,
There's a clock right there.
there's a clock. I've grown to love that clock. I also have one on my
Oh, there you go.
wrist, which actually gives us 1 more minute. So we'll see what happens. I could sit, I used to be a teacher, so I'm probably going to stand up here instead of doing that. But if it is too distracting, just go like this with your hand. And I'll probably go like this then. So, so here's what I encourage you to do. If you have a pen, I would grab it. There might be something that you want to write on the side. But also, since we have such a limited amount of time, if you have a question, I encourage you to write it down in the margin. What Eric asked me was to go through this until 9:30. And then from 9:30 to 9:45, we'll have time for further conversations, but for questions in particular. And then I do have some copies of my last book. It's called The Color of Life. It's a memoir, spiritual memoir about my journey as a white woman into issues of race. So if you want to buy those, we'll do that between 9:30 and 9:45. Anyone else need a pen?
I have one extra one.
Perfect. Cara is going to be the pen woman. We are on it. So,
No promises that these work. I'm stopping to get
I have that straw. I walk as a former student. I carry a pen case.
we also can be friends who share,
Yes.
which is if we need to share our pens, we can. So we are going to zip through this, given the time constraints. But here we are, how to be an ally. This is what Eric asked me to speak on. Eric and I, again, like he just said, are friends. We have done conversational events together. We have a fondness for one another. We're both in interracial marriages. We both have mixed-race children. We both love the Episcopal Church. We call Oakland home, so I drove over and did not get stopped by Ms. Kamala Harris traffic this morning. I was quite excited about that. But how to be an ally is what Eric asked me to speak on. To which, if you see right underneath, I then put some just little notes underneath. I have strong feelings about calling myself an ally. As a white woman, and this may or may not be something you've ever thought about, I get really, not as a white woman, as a human, I get really tripped up by verbs and nouns. And so for me, ally, to be an ally means to, it means to seek to serve. It means to seek to uplift. It means to seek to dismantle. And in that way, it means to come alongside, oftentimes, especially if we're talking about issues of racial justice, those who do not have white skin. And so that is where, underneath, I wrote down how to seek to be an ally, meaning how to try and be a better ally. Because I think for all of us, you're here and you've likely already put in place attempts at allyship or at trying to be an ally. But the bottom line right there, because recognition of allyship or of trying to be an ally is bestowed on those we desire to serve. In other words, it is, to me, it is the responsibility of someone that I am seeking to be an ally toward to call me an ally. And that is where, even in this little introduction, I put all the caveats in place. This may or may not be what you agree with or even what Eric agrees with, but this is where I stand. And so as we, in particular for those of us who identify as white, seek to be an ally, what does this mean? Especially right now, especially in a city that exalts allyship, but in a tumultuous time in our country, everywhere else. We can practice allyship by strategically helping fight injustice and promoting equity through public acts of solidarity and advocacy. I will send Eric the link to a number of different resources that I use, both general and Christian and or spiritual. But as we read through this, I would love for you to think about what allyship means, not only for you as an individual, but also for us as a church body. So the first, which all of us are probably doing, but we educate ourselves. Educate yourself. We make conscious efforts to undo biases. How many folks have taken one of the tests online? There are a number of tests that really that seek to test your biases. Have you ever taken one of those? So it sounds like we've got a couple folks. This will be one that Eric and Cara, I imagine, on our list of resources for afterwards. I was trying to save a treat. So I only printed on one page. But there are free tests that we can take. For me, as a white woman in a marriage to a black man, I took a test that was specifically about my biases toward black people, toward African Americans, and was amazed to see that I still have work to do. I still have work to do in the predominantly black and brown neighborhood that I call home in East Oakland. The reaction time that I may have when a stranger comes down the street who has skin that does not look like mine. This is real. What does it mean to undo our biases? To make conscious? It means to raise our own awareness. It means to read. It means to engage just like we are doing. It also means that we do our own work because, here's a little fill in the blanks. See, it is like I'm back in the high school year classroom. Because it is not the job of POC, people of color. It is not the job of a person of color or of a BIPOC, indigenous person of color, to educate those of us who are white. It is so easy to think I can make friends with someone whose skin does not look like my own. But it is not Eric's job to hold that which I have sometimes gotten wrong, to teach me. Eric might choose in turn to teach me. This might be what you seek to do in your new role, and it might not, and it's not your responsibility. And we work through shame and guilt. Shame and guilt inevitably on our journeys toward educating ourselves when it comes to our own racial biases. In particular, and I keep saying this, but for those of us who identify as white, shame and guilt are going to be a part of the story. They're going to crop up. In that way, it's also not my job to come and say, Eric, are you okay if I continue to just use you?
Just the only black man in the room.
You are my illustration. If I had never met Eric before, this would entirely not be okay. Eric and I, this is, my level of friendship is, are you in my phone? Have you sat around my dinner table? Have we shared a meal together? I don't think you've actually shared a meal in my house.
Not yet.
Not yet, but we've had many meeting attempts. But it's also not the job of a person of color to hold my guilt and shame. Number two, I realize we're racing through these. Own our own privilege in those same ways, including the fact that we are raced. Now we can all sit here and say, but race is not a thing. Well, that is true. It is a social construct, and it is also a way in which our society lives and operates. And that is the reality that we are become aware of. Even in the most progressive of cities like San Francisco or Oakland, even certainly in our country and around the world, we are raced people. What does it mean then to grow in our privilege, in the privileges that exist for you that benefit you and people who look like you? Now, you'll notice in this handout, Eric and I spoke before, and I said, who's the audience that I am speaking to? I always ask that question before I speak. I do a lot of preaching at different churches. I do a lot of speaking and seminars and conversational events. And so part of it, the you, is intentional. Eric and I spoke, and we talked about the demographics of this church that are mostly white. So when I say that, and when I talk about the realization, it's not a bad thing. It's just knowing I was stepping into a situation of mostly white people who were likely going to be here in this room today. In that way, same thing, there are online tests we can take. There are conversational events, just like with Sacred Grounds that many of you probably engaged with, that you can begin to see, okay, if I have white skin, that is a privilege. If I am a male, that is a privilege. If I am straight, that is a privilege. If I hold a certain socioeconomic standing in society, that is a privilege. If I call a certain zip code, whatever the thing is, there's a great one I will send to Eric to also put out. But what does it mean to be aware of that? We also let her be there. We accept feedback. that is, I don't like feedback. I do and I don't. I want to embrace constructive criticism, and maybe that's part of growing up, is learning to embrace that. There are very hard conversations that I have had. When my first book came out, it released in 2019, but when my first book came out, my rector, who's still our rector, Father Mauricio Wilson, he's at St. Paul's, Oakland, I said, Father Mauricio, I wrote a book and it's coming out. And he said, okay, what's your book about? And Father Mauricio is a black man. He's a black Costa Rican man. And he said, so you, a white lady, are gonna get up on stage and you're gonna teach us about issues of race. And I said, no. And he said, you're right, no. He said, you're gonna partner with folks. And this might be more so for the fourth thing here, but he said, you're gonna partner in conversation with people who have not had the privileges that you have had because of the color of your skin. That set in place nearly 60 conversational events the first year and a half the book came out, which was incredible. Partnering with folks like Eric and other people who identify as people of color to talk about the bigger thing. But if Father Mauricio had not had the courage to say, Cara, this is not about you, because if you get up there, this is what he said. He said, if you get up there as a white lady and you start talking about this, you're gonna get it wrong. And everyone else that is with you is going to get it wrong. So what does it mean to instead enter into this conversation? What does it mean for us to accept feedback and to get it wrong? And to, if we get it wrong, to then say, I'm sorry. We also then center the marginalized. When we are privileged, we realize our privilege. Privilege is a hard word, but it's not a bad word. And in that way, and I think this one in particular, if I could put 12 stars next to it, I would. But this is the one I think, especially when it comes to voting. We center the marginalized. We center those who have been marginalized. When it comes to navigating conflict, when it comes to voting, when it comes to our pennies and our dollars, it is the most vulnerable who must be centered in the conversation. That's a quote from a book called Born Again and Again by a friend of mine named Megan Westra. But that one right there, I keep coming back to. When we're about to cast our votes on that Tuesday in November, what does it mean to center the marginalized? When we are making decisions for this building, what does it mean to center the marginalized? What does it mean to center the homeless who are right now being pushed out, whether or not we agree or disagree with the fact that there's a homeless epidemic going on in our cities? What does it mean to center our Black and brown brothers and sisters who, San Francisco, as many of you know, was once called the Harlem of the West. And then, due to gentrification, due to a number of zoning laws in the 70s in particular, this city, which at one point had 25% African-American population, dwindled down to now what is 3%. What does it mean to center those who have historically and presently been marginalized in our cities? Number 3, we nurture truth-telling relationships. This does not mean we walk up to the Erics of the world and say, excuse me, did we just get that on camera? You may have. And say, Eric, you are a Black man. Let's be friends. No. But we nurture truth-telling relationships, both with people who look like us and with people who don't look like us. We need safe places to be able to talk about this and have conversations. We need safe people on both sides of the fence, so to speak, who will challenge us, who will help us grow in our awareness. Because we honor one another by listening to and sharing our unique stories. We become confidants to one another. We seek to understand, not to be understood. I realize I'm racing through these. The prayer of St. Francis, if you haven't heard it lately or recently, look it up at some point. But the prayer of St. Francis, if I could go by that and through that line by line and live by it, I would be such a better human. I'd probably be a better ally here. But the prayer of St. Francis, to seek to understand, even if it is not my story, the story I have lived, that which I have ever understood before. We work collaboratively, number 4, with people of color. Now I will say POC to me, and this is maybe a minor moot point, I'm beginning to see BIPOC a lot more than POC. But within this, and POC might still be an outdated term, My next book, my next book will release in April. It's called Church Camp: Bad Skits, Cry Night, and How White Evangelicalism Betrayed a Generation. So it's a fun book, and it's sometimes a heavy book, and it dives in particular into the white evangelical church camp movement, of which I was a part for a long time before I called the Episcopal Church home. But that being said, African American is not the preferred language within, that I found this out just in doing copy edits a couple months ago. No longer is African American within the publishing industry considered the appropriate language. It's Black. So there you go. Just thought I would share that. Again, that was very much a moot point, but diverging then from POC. We educate ourselves. I think this one, again, when it comes to the church, I cannot tell you what to do, but when it comes to how we might serve, how we might seek to be allies within the church, in particular as a church body, what does it mean to educate ourselves on the communities we want to support? This quote that is right here, and this will be from one of the articles that I sent to Eric. We can replicate old patterns of missionary zeal as we plant our ally flag and run the risk of jeopardizing those we are presuming to help. Ooh. Take a quick pause there. When you hear that, what do you hear? What is your first reaction to that sentence, to that quote?
I'm troubled by the use of replicating here and missionary zeal, and just, I know that's wrong. Old patterns of missionary zeal, and what do we do to change that?
I think what I think of is like even in our efforts to be good or to help or to be an ally, like we can do harm, and like what a painful realization that can be, that, you know, in some sense the road to hell is paved with good intentions, but like we really want our good intentions to be good.
And also the early Jesuit mission, not only because of the missionaries, I just envision that, not that this isn't going on today, but that's the immediate image, where you think of the children, how they were treated. You know, in Canada and etc.
What would or could that mean in a church context?
We listen. We listen. People can listen and hear them.
Yeah, I think, I mean, you know, Debbie has been very involved in our Vital and Thriving, and I don't know if you all are involved in that at St. Paul's, but so much of that is about not replicating that we're not ministering to, we're trying to minister with.
I thought it was really interesting. I think it's the presupposition that happens before the statement. Mm-hmm. That there's all implied division already. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so I was wondering if you could speak a little bit to that.
Yes, but let's say that for 9:30.
Okay.
So
did you say, just to be sure that I got it right, that POC is the preferred term to Afro-Americans now?
No, Black.
Black would be the preferred term to
Black
African
and
Americans,
hair,
at least within publishing.
Oh, within publishing.
It's also
because Black and some people, I know a person Afro-American, he prefers brown as to black.
Absolutely.
So what is better, black or brown, or is there no better? You can say black Americans or brown Americans, because that would include Spanish speaking and all the other layers of brown, of black.
Maybe we are continuing to keep answering.
I tend to do that.
No, so specifically African American would generally refer to Black, and but I think there are always I don't get to choose someone's identity.
No.
And that is, I mean, do I identify as white? Do I identify as a Scottish American, Scottish, Jewish, Irish American woman? Well, generally I just say white. But if we really want to get into it, I'll tell you about my quarter Ashkenazi Jewish roots. I'll tell you about my 23andMe and the fun analysis that my adopted mother that we found out from that.
Wow.
But that being said, I think generally, and again, this was just within publishing rules, but that's where we would also, the individual or the community themselves gets to decide. So, as far as it goes, we can replicate old patterns of missionary zeal. So the presupposition, so that's a great, so this quote is from an article from Harvard Business School. It was written by a Black woman. It was not in any way a Christian or a spiritual article, but it very much references that. And so I think what you're getting at is the presupposition that indeed we are stepping into, so what's the presupposition that we're stepping into, or the assumption that's being made?
The black folks run the show.
So is that true?
Well, it's presupposition of categorization,
Yeah.
of sorting
Yeah.
by skin color, or by whatever you choose to sort by.
Yeah. So is that true? We go back to one of the first points here. We are raced. Regardless of whether we want to be, we are raced. And this is what we have entered into as a society.
But I think we're heading, gradually heading in the right direction. I mean, I just think of changes in our society right now going on. The Olympics, Kamala Harris, CNN. I've just been struck by the number of people, POC or however we want to call it, on CNN, and how incredibly astute these commentators are. And boy, several or 5 years ago, 10 years ago, who would have thought? I mean, it's.
I think at least half of our country is.
Sorry, halfway.
I mean, I think those of us who identify as progressive, who might be found voting for the Harris-Wells ticket in November, would see that as evidence of growth. And there might be another half of our country that would see that as regression, and is not making America great again, because it's not instilling the values of whiteness. So I think you and I would have a phenomenal time around the dinner table, because I think we probably agree on most things.
Yeah.
And if my father were to come down from Kaiser, Oregon 97303, he would probably not be found agreeing on exactly what you just said, as he wears his MAGA hat and as he clicks on Fox News in the background. And so what does it mean to recognize the fact that this is not the case for all of us? And that which we might embrace as progressive and or beautiful is the exact opposite of what a lot of other people think. So how do we become an ally to everyone, including those that don't disagree? In 3 minutes or less. Notice who is and isn't sitting at the table. This is so hard, especially I think about our churches when we are made up of predominantly white folks, when that's who's showing up, when that's what our worship style embodies and or attracts. But what does it mean when we do? I know you have a number of families, or at least a handful of families here at the church that identify as families of color. What does it mean to be intentional in making sure that these families are equally represented in different spaces? What does it mean to do that? This, again, is a conversation that extends beyond the 9:30 hour. But it's not just notice, but then it's do something about. Notice who is and isn't sitting at the table, and then work to bring diversity to the table. This is in our churches, this is in our places of work, this is in our schools. If necessary, we give up our seat. I remember we used to live in Seattle, and I attended there was a big MLK prayer breakfast that happened every year. And one of the years we were up there, the speaker, for the first time in its history, was a white man. And he stood up there and he said, I don't know if you've noticed, but I'm white. And he was this beloved Jesuit priest from the Seattle area. But in that message, and there was a reason why he was there, and we just thought the world of him. But he said, look at your LinkedIn profile, and look at who, if you have LinkedIn, and he said, look at who you are and are recommending within your places of work. When it comes to a new position, if you are given the opportunity, so for me as a speaker or as a writer, as I open up space for other people, I notice if I am filling the space with only white folks. I notice if I am filling the space with only straight folks. I notice if I am filling the space with only men or only women. So what does it mean to pick and choose and to make sure that representation and diversity is a value that we embody? If necessary, we give up our seat. And then we stay on the journey, we build a community of allies. I think that's what it means to continue to have this conversation, to embrace safe spaces, because you need allies as you seek to be an ally. We are comfortable with being uncomfortable. Who likes to be uncomfortable? Oh, perfect. Tell me your name.
I love it.
Oh my
I'm
gosh.
not uncomfortable, I get a little nervous.
No, but I mean, to be, that's hard. It is hard for me to go back and visit my parents. I don't want to see Fox News blaring in the background. And I believe that our relationship is bigger than some of the values that we might embody. And that can be for the next time I come out. We can talk about how to engage. But it's not easy. It's not comfortable always being comfortable. Even if some of us thrive on discomfort or conflict, and it kind of gets us jazzed inside. But it's uncomfortable. We practice compassion and self-love. Mark 12:31, I had to throw in at least one Bible verse in here. Anyone know what that is? It's also in Leviticus. It's a very famous one. The Jewish people used to, they used to wear a little, I forget what it's called.
Oh, television.
Yeah, right on their forehead. But it said, the verse, if we were to look at 30 and 31, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and all your strength. And here's verse 31. Love your neighbor as yourself. Oh, we forget about the yourself. I mean, this gives me chills just even saying that out loud. But we say, yes, we should love God. Yes, we should love other people. We get to love ourselves. As we enter into this, we get to practice love and self-compassion on ourselves. As we love God, as we love other people. We get to practice that because we are going to get it wrong.
And it's also then you can take better care of other people if you have taken care of yourself and you're not, I don't mean it derogatory, but you're not a basket case yourself, and you're more able to, if you take care of yourself.
So, the last sentence. Welcome to the last sentence. But you can read through it with your hands, yeah. A true ally is motivated by a drive for justice where all can flourish. So that being said, it is 9:32 according to that clock, and it is 9:30 according to my watch, which means that we have approximately 13 to 15 minutes for questions and or for you to purchase a book. Venmo, PayPal, and there's also a little Stripe for cards are all accepted, or a check. Or cash. And I realize that's slightly awkward and maybe uncomfortable, but some of us love uncomfortable conversations. So, what questions, comments, monetary gifts, what is rumbling around inside of you? I realize we could have just spent 8 hours on this, and we just spent approximately 24 minutes. What are you thinking and feeling and questioning right now?
Listening. Is listening important? How much of our part of the conversation requires listening in contrast to speaking without listening?
And Eric, you just prompted me to invite everyone to, if they choose, I would love to invite you to just talk about to answer this question in one word, what are you feeling right now? And if you want, you can add on a sentence or two about that too. But it sounds like, Eric, the word that is sticking out to you is listening.
Yes.
Cara, would you like to?
I feel conflicted, not by what you said, but I was just thinking about, like, as Tim was mentioning, the Olympics, and I think so much of the beauty of Team USA at the Olympics is the strength is in its diversity, and it saddens me to think of people that don't see that, and that's where my conflicted feelings come in.
Well, I was a flight attendant for 20 years, and I talked to all kinds of people.
Yeah.
So I had Vietnam people on the plane, soldiers and everything. So I'm just thinking of how accommodating I have been in my life.
Do you have one word that would describe what you're feeling?
Generous.
Generous. What a beautiful word. And feel free if you don't feel like answering this question to simply just.
I haven't narrowed it down. I just got out of graduate school at USF, so I've been having this conversation for 2 years.
Yeah.
And it's a very diverse school.
Yeah.
And I came from a profession that was, at its time, very diverse. And I was usually the only woman at the table, and at graduate school, I was the only white woman. So, I think we're at a very interesting time, and I think this is happening very rapidly. I'm trying to find the word, I think. Sorry to take time. But I think it's not what comes next sounds too easy a pin to land on. It's like, how do we integrate? I think. What comes next is integration. So there's a conversation and then there's categories. But then there's integrating who we individually are and feeling comfortable that it's okay to have different labels and it's okay to be in different things. Which, I come from New York, and we always, that's the so-and-so-ness, that's the so-and-so-ness, but there was a respect for the diversity of it. And so I think it's the being completely comfortable in a diverse room where it's normal. And how do we get to that place instead of talking about the tension? I'd like to see the conversation move to the discussion of this integration of it, where it's just, you know, do we have beef tonight, or do we have pork? Do we have fish? Do we have, you know, it's this integration.
Integration of the beloved community. Where do we go from here?
Well, integration of the tendency of human beings to categorize. I don't think that's gonna change. But it becomes normalized. Where we're not, because I think that's gonna happen if Kamala Harris wins. That is gonna need to happen very, very fast.
Absolutely.
And so it's the front of the brain kind of overtaking the back of the brain.
I love that. We're
Sorry.
gonna keep going just due to
I
obviously we can also do
apologize.
dinner. So we can do dinner, all of us can do dinner together. Tim, go ahead. Is there a word or phrase, word that's sticking out to you right now? About how you're feeling, doing as you leave from here?
Well, I like the use of the word partnership. And that to me is, evokes kind of a very, the same kind of meaning as ally, is I think what you're talking about. And a partnership suggests equality, respect, connection, connectivity, invitational, all of those. And I'm hoping that you would agree with that ally and partnership are very similar.
Oh, yeah.
My one word is enlightened. I'm not saying this to flatter, but this handout is very good. I mean, it's excellent. Well, obviously it would be with written books, etc., but thank you. And what it has done for me, besides enlightened me, it's given me a skeleton on which I can, or learn to act, on which I can learn to act, to be more aware. And this enlightened is my word.
Glad to have a word.
It's kind of an extreme word.
I like extreme.
Intractable. I found myself, I didn't want to go depressed, but noticing and being discouraged at how little, how much has not changed. And the hopeful piece of that, it just may be my generation that's finally shuffling off this planet. But I see behaviors around me that are just the ones I saw in the Deep South in my teenage. That language, attitudes, and a surface celebration of something which is not real. And so it's still very hard work.
Debbie, do you have a word?
The word that comes to mind is desire, and that's for finding people that I can be in allyship with, so I can be an ally to other people. Because I
you and me.
I need to have complete trust.
Would either of you like to share a word that's coming to mind right
Yeah, I guess just the word loving and also genuine. I think that we can overthink. I think we can overthink situations and have a tendency towards self-deprecation. And I think it's good to remind ourselves that if we speak from the heart and we approach situations with true love, then there's nothing else that really matters for that.
now? Do you have anything you want to add? Do you have anything you want to add?
Oh, abundance. God's table has room for everyone.
Since we brought it up, I'm going to read the prayer of St. Francis, or part of it, as our closing. Just have to wait until my fat thumbs type it in. Hold on. I don't want the video. May I read this in closing? Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. Where there is sadness, joy. O divine Master, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive, it is in pardoning that we are pardoned, and it is in dying that we are born to eternal life. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, friends. It has been an honor.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. The conversation continues.
Thank you.